Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the ESS Liberty and watched the alien ships appear around his vessel. The ships were huge and sleek, made of metal that seemed to glow with its own light. His small exploration ship looked like a toy next to them. "Captain, we're getting a message," said Lieutenant Amy Carter from her station. Her voice was calm, but Jake could hear the worry underneath. This was humanity's first meeting with aliens, and they were clearly outmatched. The main screen flickered and showed the face of an alien creature. It had blue skin and 4 eyes, and its head was shaped like a triangle. When it spoke, the words came through the translator in a cold, bored voice. "I am Admiral Kira Zenth of the Zephyrian Empire. You will identify yourselves and state your business in this sector." Jake stepped forward. "I'm Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth Space Service. We come in peace, seeking contact with other intelligent species." The alien's 4 eyes looked at him with what seemed like amusement. "Earth. Yes, we detected your primitive signals decades ago. You have finally developed space travel. How quaint." Behind Jake, Colonel Ryan Blake watched the exchange with sharp eyes. Blake was Earth's top military officer, sent along in case things went wrong. He did not like the alien's tone, but he kept his mouth shut and listened. "You will follow my ships to Zephyr Prime," Admiral Zenth continued. "The Galactic Federation Council will decide what to do with your species." "We appreciate the invitation," Jake said carefully, "but we would like to know more about this Federation before we agree to anything." The alien made a sound that might have been laughter. "You misunderstand, human. This is not an invitation. This is an order. Your species will comply or face the consequences." Amy Carter's hands moved over her controls, checking their weapons and shields. The readings made her stomach sink. Their best missiles could not even scratch the alien ship's shields. Their armor would last maybe 10 seconds against alien weapons. "I understand," Jake said finally. He had no choice. "We'll follow your ships." The journey to Zephyr Prime took 3 days. During that time, the humans learned about the galaxy they had stumbled into. The Galactic Federation controlled thousands of star systems. Dozens of alien races worked together under Zephyrian leadership. They had technology that seemed like magic to human eyes. They also learned about the war. For 50 years, the Federation had been fighting something called the Void Reapers. These creatures came from dark space beyond the galaxy's edge. They consumed entire worlds, leaving nothing but empty space behind. The Federation needed soldiers, and they needed them badly. Zephyr Prime was a city planet covered in towers that reached into space. The ESS Liberty was guided to a landing platform deep underground. Jake, Amy, Ryan, and 2 other crew members were escorted through halls filled with aliens of every shape and size. The Federation Council chamber was enormous. Hundreds of aliens sat in a circle around a central platform. Jake and his team stood in the middle while alien voices echoed around them. "The humans show basic intelligence," said one alien that looked like a giant insect. "But their technology is primitive." "What use could they be?" "Their world has useful metals," said another that resembled a walking tree. "We could mine it efficiently if we relocate the population." Ryan Blake's jaw tightened. They were talking about humans like they were livestock. Admiral Zenth stood and raised one hand. The chamber fell silent. "The Federation has decided. Earth will become a Class 3 tributary world. Your species will provide soldiers for the war effort. Your planet will supply raw materials as needed." "And if we refuse?" Jake asked. Several aliens made sounds that the translator turned into laughter. Admiral Zenth's expression did not change. "You cannot refuse. Your ships are toys. Your weapons are fireworks. Your planet could be destroyed in a matter of hours." Amy Carter stepped forward. "How many soldiers do you want?" 1 million to start," Zenth replied. "They will be trained and equipped with proper weapons. Many will die fighting the Reapers, but this is the price of Federation protection." Colonel Blake finally spoke. "Our people won't go quietly. Humans don't like being forced into anything." "Then they will learn," Zenth said coldly. "The Zephyrian Empire has broken stronger species than yours. You will adapt or perish." The meeting ended with humanity's formal induction into the Federation as a vassal state. Jake and his crew were given quarters in the diplomatic section, while the details were worked out. That night they sat around a small table and talked in low voices. "They think we're nothing," Amy said. "Just another primitive species they can push around." "Maybe that's good," Ryan said thoughtfully. "If they underestimate us, they won't see us coming." "Coming where?" Jake asked. "They could wipe out Earth with one ship." Not forever, Ryan replied. No empire lasts forever, and these aliens have been winning for so long they've forgotten how to really fight. Amy looked puzzled. What do you mean? Ryan smiled grimly. They fight like machines. Everything by the book. They've never faced an enemy that breaks the rules. The Void Reapers seem to be giving them trouble, Jake pointed out. Because the Reapers are stronger and tougher, Ryan said. But what if they faced an enemy that was weaker but refused to quit? What if they fought someone who would try anything, no matter how crazy, to win? The next day, the humans were taken to see Federation military training. Alien soldiers moved in perfect formations. Their weapons fired in coordinated patterns. Everything was planned and precise. Very impressive, Jake told their guide. A lizard-like creature named Commander Voss. Federation military doctrine has been perfected over centuries, Voss replied proudly. We have eliminated all inefficiencies from warfare. Amy watched a group of alien Marines practice close combat. They followed exact patterns, each move rehearsed and predictable. What if the enemy doesn't fight the way you expect? Impossible, Voss said. All rational beings follow logical military principles. Chaos leads only to defeat. Ryan Blake said nothing, but his mind was working. These aliens had never fought humans. They had never faced soldiers who grew up playing games where the rules changed constantly. They had never battled people who thought outside the box was just the starting point. A week later, the ESS Liberty returned to Earth with news that changed everything. Humanity was no longer alone in the universe. They were also no longer free. But as word spread across Earth about their new alien masters, something else spread too. Anger, determination, and a quiet promise that humans would find a way to fight back. In military bases around the world, officers began making plans. In research labs, scientists started studying alien technology. In the streets, ordinary people began asking how long it would be before Earth's children came home. The aliens thought they had conquered another primitive world. What they had actually done was give humanity a reason to become something the galaxy had never seen before. A species with nothing left to lose. 2 years had passed since Earth joined the Federation. The first human soldiers arrived at Kepler Station looking nothing like the polished alien troops. Captain Lisa Park watched her regiment line up for inspection. They wore mismatched armor and carried weapons that were already outdated when the aliens gave them out. Look at them, sneered Commander Voss. The lizard alien who supervised human forces, barely civilized. How are these creatures supposed to fight the Reapers? Lisa said nothing. Her soldiers looked rough because they came from Earth's toughest places. Street fighters from Detroit, mountain troops from Afghanistan, Marines who had fought in every war Earth could offer. The aliens saw primitive barbarians. Lisa saw survivors. The briefing room smelled of fear and alien sweat. On the main screen, images showed what they would be fighting. Void Reapers looked like nightmare creatures made of metal and flesh. They had no fixed shape, changing their bodies to match whatever they fought. Some were the size of tanks, others filled entire ships. The Reapers have taken the Proxima system, Admiral Zenth announced. Federation forces will retake it. Human units will lead the assault. Sergeant Danny Walsh raised his hand. Lead the assault or get killed first. Several aliens hissed with anger. Admiral Zenth's 4 eyes focused on Danny. You will follow orders or face execution. Yes, sir, Danny replied. But his tone made it clear what he thought of those orders. The battle plan was simple. Human forces would attack the Reaper positions head-on, while alien ships provided fire support from orbit. The humans would draw Reaper attention, allowing the real soldiers to flank around and strike the weak points. Standard Federation tactics, explained Commander Voss. Overwhelming force applied to precise targets. The humans will absorb casualties while proper troops win the battle. Lieutenant Nicole Barnes studied the tactical display. The plan made sense if you thought of humans as expendable. Throw them at the enemy until the Reapers were busy, then hit them from the sides. Clean and efficient. The transport ships jumped into Proxima space 3 days later. Immediately, Reaper vessels swarmed toward them like angry wasps. The creatures had been waiting. Human units, begin your attack, came the order from the Federation command ship. Captain Lisa Park looked at her soldiers packed into their assault pods. Remember what we talked about. The aliens expect us to die quick and easy. Let's disappoint them. The pods launched toward Proxima Station. Reaper fire filled the space around them with deadly energy. Human pods started exploding, but the survivors kept coming. This was their first real test against the galaxy's worst nightmare. Danny Walsh's pod hit the station hard. The metal walls around him were alive, trying to crush his squad before they could get out. Danny pulled the pin on a thermal grenade and jammed it into the wall. The explosion gave them a few seconds to break free. "Move, move, move," he shouted, leading his squad into the station's corridors. The Reapers were waiting for them. Creatures that looked like metal spiders with acid for blood came pouring out of the walls. Federation doctrine said to establish a defensive position and call for support. Danny had a different idea. "Fix bayonets," he yelled. His soldiers charged straight into the Reapers with knives attached to their rifles. The aliens watching from orbit could not believe what they were seeing. No rational species fought giant monsters with sharp sticks, but it worked. The Reapers had adapted to energy weapons and explosive shells. They had never faced soldiers who would stab them repeatedly while screaming war cries. The metal spiders fell back, confused by this new type of enemy. Across the station, other human units were doing the impossible. Lieutenant Barnes led her squad through maintenance tunnels too small for Reapers to follow. They popped out behind enemy lines and attacked with improvised weapons made from station equipment. Sergeant Tony Rivers found himself trapped in the station's reactor room with 6 Reapers blocking the only exit. Federation training said to call for evacuation. Tony looked at the nuclear reactor and smiled grimly. "Hey, ugly," he shouted at the Reapers. "Want to see a human magic trick?" He started pulling safety controls out of the reactor. The Reapers moved toward him, but Tony was already running. The explosion took out half the station and every Reaper in the area. Tony's squad barely made it to the escape pods in time. From the command ship, Admiral Zenth watched human forces fight like nothing he had ever seen. They used their own equipment as weapons. They turned every piece of the station into a trap. When they ran out of ammunition, they fought with their hands and teeth. "This is not how civilized beings conduct warfare," Commander Voss said with disgust. "No," Admiral Zenth replied slowly, "but it is effective." The battle raged for 6 hours. By the end, Proxima Station was barely holding together. Most of the human force was dead or wounded. But something amazing had happened. The Reapers were retreating. For the first time in decades, Federation forces had driven off a Reaper attack without losing the entire battle zone. The alien commanders could not understand how primitive humans had succeeded, where advanced alien tactics had failed. Captain Lisa Park limped onto the command ship's bridge with her report. Half her regiment was gone, but they had accomplished their mission. "How?" Admiral Zenth asked. "How did you defeat them?" Lisa thought about how to explain it. "The Reapers adapt to whatever attacks them, right? They learn to counter energy weapons and explosives and fancy tactics. Yes, that is why they are so dangerous. But they can't adapt to crazy," Lisa said. "Every time they figured out what we were doing, we did something else. We never gave them time to learn." Word of the human victory spread through the Federation fleet. Alien officers who had dismissed humans as cannon fodder started asking questions. How had these primitives accomplished what advanced civilizations could not? The answer was simple but hard for aliens to understand. Humans did not fight to win. They fought to not lose. There was a difference. Over the next months, more human units arrived in the war zone. Each group brought new ideas about how to fight Reapers. Some specialized in close combat. Others became experts at turning civilian equipment into weapons. A few learned to fight in spacesuits using nothing but tools and determination. The aliens started calling them the unreasonable ones. Reapers could predict what logical enemies would do. But humans did not fight logically. They fought desperately, creatively, and without regard for what was supposed to be impossible. Sergeant Danny Walsh became famous throughout the Federation for his new fighting manual. It had only one rule. If it works, do it. If it doesn't work, do something else. Federation generals tried to study human tactics, but there was nothing to study. Every human unit fought differently. They adapted faster than their enemies could counter-adapt. They treated every rule as a suggestion and every limit as a challenge. Lieutenant Nicole Barnes documented their success rate. Human forces were taking heavy casualties, but they were winning battles that had been considered hopeless. More importantly, they were teaching the Reapers something new: fear. For the first time in 50 years of war, Void Reapers were learning to be afraid of their enemies. They had faced every type of weapon and tactic the galaxy could produce. But they had never fought soldiers who would ram spaceships into their motherships just to see what happened. Admiral Zenth received a message from the Federation High Command. They wanted more human troops, as many as Earth could provide. The primitives had become the Federation's best weapon against an enemy that had seemed unstoppable. But something else was happening that the aliens did not notice yet. Every battle taught humans more about alien technology. Every fight showed them how Federation forces really worked, and every victory made them more confident about what they could accomplish. The galaxy had unleashed humanity on its greatest enemy. Soon they would learn that humans were very good students and even better teachers. The war had been going badly for 6 months. Void Reapers were learning to counter human tactics just like they countered everything else. What had once been surprise attacks now met prepared defenses. The creatures were adapting faster than humans could innovate. General Martha Stone stood in the command center of Centauri Prime, watching the tactical display with growing concern. The Reapers had assembled the largest fleet in galactic history. 3,000 ships were heading straight for the Federation capital system. They're not just trying to win territory this time, reported Commander Brett Young, her intelligence officer. They want to end the war completely. The Federation had assembled every ship they could find. Zephyrian dreadnoughts, Altarian cruisers, and hundreds of smaller vessels from dozens of species. At the center of the fleet were 50 human ships, improvised warships built from freighters and mining vessels. The plan is simple, Admiral Zenth announced to the combined fleet commanders. We establish a defensive line at the outer system and hold them until reinforcements arrive. What reinforcements? Asked Captain Jake Morrison, now commanding the human fleet section. This is everything we have. Then we die with honor, Admiral Zenth replied coldly. General Stone had a different idea. She had been studying Reaper tactics for 2 years, and she had noticed something important. The creatures were very good at adapting to attacks, but they were not good at adapting to confusion. Brett, show them the analysis, she ordered. Commander Young activated a holographic display showing Reaper battle formations. They adapt by observing patterns and developing counters. But what if there were no patterns to observe? The alien commanders looked puzzled. All military forces follow logical patterns, insisted Admiral Zenth. Chaos leads to defeat. Not for humans, General Stone said with a grim smile. Commander Young, initiate Operation Madhouse. What happened next would be talked about in military academies for centuries. Instead of forming defensive lines, human ships scattered throughout the system in apparently random patterns. Instead of coordinating their attacks, each ship began fighting independently. The Reapers had prepared for standard Federation tactics. They expected energy bombardments followed by fighter attacks. Instead, they found human freighters ramming their capital ships while broadcasting Earth music at maximum volume. Mining ships used industrial equipment to tear holes in Reaper hulls. A converted passenger liner somehow managed to crash through 3 enemy vessels before finally exploding. Major Kelly Johnson led the most insane attack of the battle. Her team of Marines boarded a Reaper mothership using nothing but magnetic clamps and cutting torches. They fought their way through living corridors that tried to digest them, using improvised weapons and pure human stubbornness. The walls are trying to eat us, shouted Sergeant Chris Walker as organic metal flowed around his boots. Then we eat them back, Kelly replied, jabbing her knife into the pulsing surface. The Reaper ship shuddered as if in pain. They fought for 3 hours inside the creature, following no plan except to cause as much damage as possible. When they finally reached what seemed like a brain core, Kelly planted every explosive her team carried and ran for the exit. The mothership's death scream could be heard across subspace. Other Reapers hesitated, confused by the loss of their command ship. That moment of uncertainty was all the humans needed. Dr. Peter Hayes had spent months studying captured Reaper technology. He had discovered something the aliens missed. Reapers adapted to logical threats, but they could not process information that made no sense. Target their communication nodes with the sonic weapons, he ordered from the research ship ESS Darwin. Sir, sonic weapons don't work in space, his assistant pointed out. Exactly, Dr. Hayes replied with a mad grin. The human ships began broadcasting impossible sounds through subspace. Federation generals tried to understand what the humans were doing. The Reapers tried to adapt to an attack that should not exist. That was when everything started falling apart for the Void. Reapers, their adaptation systems began overloading as they tried to counter weapons that violated the laws of physics. Some Reapers started attacking each other, confused by signals that registered as both friendly and hostile. Others simply stopped moving, overwhelmed by data that made no logical sense. Captain Amy Carter, now commanding the ESS Liberty II, led a squadron of human fighters into the chaos. They were not trying to destroy Reaper ships. Instead, they were planting devices that would broadcast human poetry and music directly into Reaper neural networks. "This is insane," her wingman radioed. "We're attacking them with Shakespeare." "And it's working," Amy replied, watching another Reaper ship drift away in confusion. The battle turned into something that had never been seen before. Humans fought with weapons that should not work, using tactics that made no sense against an enemy that had always been logical. The result was chaos on a galactic scale. Lieutenant Tom Bradley discovered that Reapers could not adapt to attacks that changed faster than they could process. His ship began firing different weapons every few seconds. Lasers, missiles, railguns, sonic pulses, electromagnetic bursts, and finally a load of industrial garbage fired from the cargo bay. The Reaper ship he was fighting tried to adapt to each attack, but by the time it countered one weapon, Bradley had already switched to another. Finally, the creature gave up and retreated. All across the battlefield, similar scenes were playing out. Human forces were winning not through superior firepower, but through superior unpredictability. They fought like a storm made of pure chaos, impossible to predict or counter. Admiral Zenth watched from his command ship in amazement. "This should not be possible. They are violating every principle of military science." "Maybe that's why it works," suggested Commander Voss, who had learned to respect human methods. The Reaper fleet began to break apart. Ships that had fought as a coordinated force started fleeing individually. Their adaptation systems were overloaded, their command structure was confused, and they were facing an enemy that seemed to make up new rules of war every few minutes. General Stone received reports from across the system. Human casualties were heavy, but Reaper losses were catastrophic. For the first time in the war, the creatures were retreating from a battle they should have won. "Ma'am, we're getting surrender requests," reported Commander Young with disbelief. "From the Reapers?" "No, ma'am. From some of our own allies. They want to know if the humans have gone completely insane." Martha Stone looked at the tactical display. Human ships were still chasing retreating Reapers, still broadcasting impossible weapons and singing war songs over subspace radio. Maybe they had gone insane, but it was working. The Battle of Centauri Prime ended 12 hours after it began. The Reaper fleet was scattered across 3 star systems, their ships fleeing in every direction. The Federation had achieved total victory using tactics that made no military sense whatsoever. But something else had happened during the battle. The galaxy had watched humans fight with a creativity and determination that seemed almost supernatural. They had seen soldiers who would rather die than give up, who treated impossible odds as just another problem to solve. Word spread through subspace networks across the galaxy. Humanity had not just won a battle. They had figured out how to win the war. They had discovered weaknesses in an enemy that had seemed unbeatable. As repair crews worked on damaged ships and medics treated the wounded, the galaxy began to realize something important. The primitive species from Earth was not primitive anymore. They had become something new, something that had never existed in galactic history. A species that could outthink any enemy, outfight any challenge, and absolutely refuse to accept defeat. The Void Reapers had made a mistake when they decided to fight humanity. They had awakened something that was about to change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. And the aliens who had once enslaved Earth were beginning to wonder if they had made an even bigger mistake. The war had changed after Centauri Prime. Instead of defending Federation space, humanity was now hunting down the remaining Void Reapers. Admiral Chris Walker commanded the new Human Expeditionary Force, a fleet designed specifically for this mission. The alien members of the Federation Council watched the hunt with growing unease. Human forces moved through former Reaper territory like a plague, clearing entire star systems in weeks. They were efficient, thorough, and completely without mercy. Colonel Grace Mitchell stood on the bridge of the ESS Retribution as her fleet approached the Vega system. Intelligence reports said Reapers had infected 3 planets here, turning them into breeding grounds for new creatures. Her job was to clean them out. Standard procedure, she told her officers. We glass the planets from orbit, then send in ground teams to make sure nothing survived. No exceptions. Captain Tim Rodriguez watched the orbital bombardment through his ship's sensors. Human weapons had improved dramatically over the past year. They now used Reaper technology turned against its creators, along with new weapons that existed purely to cause maximum destruction. The planets burned for 6 hours. When the fires finally died, there was nothing left alive on any of the 3 worlds. The human ground teams that landed afterward found only ash and melted rock. Sir, alien observers are requesting permission to inspect the planets, reported Lieutenant Susan Clark from Communications. Tell them no. Colonel Mitchell replied without hesitation. This is a human operation. We don't need witnesses. That was the problem from the Federation's point of view. Human forces were becoming increasingly independent. They followed their own procedures, used their own equipment, and answered only to human commanders. They were still technically Federation troops, but they acted more like a separate military. The efficiency was undeniable. Where it had taken the Federation decades to lose ground to the Reapers, human forces reclaimed it in months. They had developed new tactics specifically for hunting creatures that adapted to everything. The key was never giving Reapers time to adapt. Human attack fleets moved constantly, hitting multiple targets at once using different weapons and tactics for each strike. By the time a Reaper force learned to counter one attack, the humans were already somewhere else doing something completely different, but the methods were starting to worry their allies. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Wilson documented the psychological impact of human tactics on Federation forces. Alien soldiers who fought alongside humans reported disturbing dreams. They talked about human Marines who laughed while charging into certain death. They described commanders who treated civilian casualties as acceptable losses if it meant killing more Reapers. They're becoming like the enemy, reported one Zephyrian officer, cold, calculating, and completely focused on destruction. Admiral Zenth received these reports with growing concern. He had fought alongside humans for 2 years now, and he had watched them change from desperate defenders into something else entirely. They were still effective, perhaps more effective than any force in galactic history, but they were also becoming frightening. The change was most obvious in veteran human units. Soldiers who had survived multiple Reaper encounters developed a different way of thinking. They stopped seeing enemies as living beings and started seeing them as problems to be solved. They calculated casualties like mathematics and planned operations like industrial processes. Captain Jake Morrison, now commanding the human battleship ESS Earth's Fury, exemplified this new mentality. He had personally overseen the destruction of 47 Reaper strongholds. His methods were brilliant, ruthless, and completely without compassion. Reapers don't surrender, he explained to a group of alien observers. They don't negotiate. They don't show mercy. So neither do we. We hunt them down and we kill them all. That's how you win a war. The observers from the Altarian Republic left the meeting looking shaken. They had expected to see heroes defending the galaxy. Instead, they found soldiers who seemed to enjoy their work a little too much. Dr. Ellen Hayes, a human psychologist assigned to study combat stress, noticed the pattern in her reports. Human soldiers were not breaking under the pressure of constant warfare. Instead, they were adapting to it. They were becoming better at violence, more creative with destruction, and more comfortable with killing. We're winning, she told General Martha Stone during a private meeting, but we're paying a price for it. Our people are changing. Changing how? Martha asked, though she suspected she already knew. They're becoming predators, Ellen replied quietly. Not just soldiers, but hunters. They don't just want to defeat the Reapers anymore. They want to destroy them completely. This became clear during the liberation of the Sirius colonies. Captain Amy Carter led the assault force that retook 6 human settlements from Reaper control. The creatures had been using human civilians as raw material for new biomechanical constructs. What happened next shocked even hardened Federation veterans. The human rescue force did not just free the survivors. They methodically hunted down every Reaper creature in the system, including ones that were trying to flee. They tracked escaping ships across 3 star systems, destroying them one by one. They left no survivors. Sir, we've eliminated all Reaper forces, reported Major Kevin Davis. The system is secure. Define eliminated, requested Admiral Zenth over subspace radio. Total extinction. Davis replied matter-of-factly. "We tracked down every creature, every ship, every trace of Reaper presence. Nothing survived." The thoroughness was impressive, but it was also terrifying. Human forces had become so good at hunting Reapers that they could achieve complete extermination of enemy forces. They had turned warfare into a science of total destruction. Other Federation species began to notice how human ships moved through space. They traveled in formation that seemed almost predatory, scanning every system for signs of enemy presence. When they found Reapers, they attacked with coordinated precision that left nothing to chance. Commander Brett Young, now Chief of Human Intelligence Operations, maintained databases on every known Reaper hiding place. His network of human spies and reconnaissance teams covered half the galaxy. When they located enemy forces, human strike teams arrived within days. "We know where they are, where they're going, and what they're planning," he reported to the Federation Council. "Give us 6 more months and we'll finish this war permanently." The aliens in the council chamber exchanged worried glances. They had wanted the war to end, but they were beginning to wonder what would happen when humanity no longer had Reapers to fight. That question became urgent when human forces achieved something unprecedented. They captured a Reaper mothership intact, along with its crew of biomechanical creatures. For the first time in galactic history, Void Reapers were taken alive. The interrogation methods used by human intelligence officers made even veteran soldiers uncomfortable. They did not torture the creatures in any conventional sense. Instead, they studied them like laboratory specimens, taking them apart piece by piece to understand how they worked. "They're not treating them like prisoners," observed Commander Voss with obvious distress. "They're treating them like research materials." Dr. Peter Hayes defended the methods. "These creatures have killed billions of beings across the galaxy. They've destroyed entire civilizations. Understanding how they work is more important than treating them humanely." But alien observers noted that human researchers seemed to enjoy their work. They approached the dissection of Reaper creatures with enthusiasm that bordered on excitement. They were learning to think like their enemies, and that was making them something the galaxy had never seen before. The final proof came during the Battle of Wolf 359, where human forces encountered the largest remaining Reaper fleet. Instead of engaging in ship-to-ship combat, the humans used psychological warfare. They broadcast recordings of Reaper death screams. They transmitted images of destroyed Reaper worlds. They sent messages in Reaper bio-language that roughly translated to "We are coming for you." The Reaper fleet broke formation and fled without firing a shot. "They're afraid of us," reported Captain Tom Bradley with obvious satisfaction. "The monsters are actually afraid of humans." Word of this victory spread throughout Federation space, but the reaction was not what humans expected. Instead of celebration, there was concern. If creatures that had terrorized the galaxy for 50 years were now afraid of humanity, what did that say about what humans had become? The answer came in a classified report from the Federation Intelligence Service. Human forces were no longer just soldiers fighting to defend their homes. They had become something else entirely. They had become the thing that nightmares feared. And the galaxy was beginning to wonder if they had created a bigger monster than the one they had set out to destroy. The war officially ended on a Tuesday. Admiral Kevin Barnes stood on the bridge of the ESS Vengeance as the last Reaper fleet surrendered at the edge of forever, the galaxy's most distant frontier. After 3 years of brutal conflict, humanity had achieved the impossible. The Void Reapers were extinct. "Sir, we're receiving surrender signals from the final Reaper command ship," reported Lieutenant Rachel Stone. "They're requesting terms." Kevin looked at the massive biomechanical vessel on his screen. It was damaged and alone, the last survivor of a species that had once threatened to consume the galaxy. He thought about all the worlds they had destroyed, all the civilizations they had eaten, all the humans who had died fighting them. "No terms," he said quietly. "Finish them." The human fleet opened fire as one. Within minutes, the last Void Reaper was nothing but scattered debris floating in deep space. The war that had lasted 50 years was finally over. But across the galaxy, other beings were having very different conversations. On Zephyr Prime, the Federation Council met in emergency session. Admiral Zenth stood before representatives from dozens of species, all asking the same question. What do we do about humanity? "They have the most powerful military force in known space," reported the Altarian delegate. Their ships are equipped with weapons that make our best technology look primitive. Their soldiers are trained to fight in ways that terrify our own troops. And they're no longer taking orders," added the representative from the Centauri Federation. "Human commanders make their own decisions. They go where they want when they want. They've stopped asking for permission." Admiral Zenth had seen this coming for months. Humanity had grown from a vassal species into something that challenged Zephyrian authority. They had their own shipyards now, their own colonies, their own agenda. Worse, they had proven they could outthink and outfight any enemy the galaxy could produce. The discussion was interrupted by an announcement that made everyone freeze. President Helen Davis of Earth was requesting permission to address the Council. Not as a vassal leader asking for favors, but as an equal power demanding a hearing. She entered the chamber wearing a simple black uniform with no decorations except a small patch showing Earth. Behind her walked 2 human guards who carried weapons that could probably destroy the entire building. The aliens in the chamber shifted nervously as she approached the central podium. "Honored delegates," Helen began, her voice carrying clearly through the vast space. "I come before you today to announce a change in galactic politics." She activated a holographic display, showing human colonies throughout former Reaper territory. Dozens of new settlements, mining operations, and military bases that had been established without Federation approval. "Humanity no longer recognizes Earth as a tributary world," she continued. "We are withdrawing from all vassal agreements and claiming independence. Any attempt to interfere with human sovereignty will be met with appropriate force." The chamber erupted in angry voices. Several alien delegates demanded to know by what right humans could make such claims. Helen waited for the noise to die down before answering. "By right of conquest," she said simply. "We won this war. We destroyed an enemy that you could not defeat in 50 years of trying. We've earned our place in this galaxy." Admiral Zenth stood up. "The Federation does not recognize human independence. Earth remains under Zephyrian protection." Helen smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Admiral, how many ships do you have in this system?" "The home fleet consists of 200 vessels," Zenth replied proudly. "I have 500 human ships in hyperspace around this planet," Helen said calmly. "Would you like to test your protection against our gratitude?" The threat was clear and absolute. Humanity had brought enough firepower to destroy the Federation capital, and everyone in the chamber knew they would use it if necessary. The species that had once been dismissed as primitive barbarians now held the galaxy's most powerful military. Commander Joe Carter, now leading the human colonial fleet, was already implementing the next phase of their plan. Across former Reaper space, human settlements were declaring independence from their host systems. They offered trade agreements and mutual defense pacts, but they would no longer accept alien authority. The response was swift and predictable. Several Federation species tried to reassert control over human colonies in their territory. The results were educational for everyone involved. The Rigel Republic sent a fleet to reclaim human mining operations in their outer systems. They found their ships outgunned, outmaneuvered, and completely outclassed by human defenders. The battle lasted 6 hours and ended with the complete destruction of the Republican fleet. Captain Lisa Rodriguez, now commanding the Human Defense Forces, sent a message to the Republican government. "We offered to buy mining rights. You chose to use force. Consider this a lesson in the new economics of galactic politics." Similar confrontations occurred throughout human space. Alien governments that tried to enforce old treaties found themselves facing military forces that had learned warfare from fighting the galaxy's worst nightmare. The results were always the same. Human forces won. Dr. Lisa Wright, humanity's first ambassador to the independent colonies, documented the changing political landscape. Former Federation allies were quietly switching sides, offering deals to human governments instead of alien ones. They had seen what humans could accomplish when they set their minds to it. "We're not conquering anyone," she explained to a gathering of neutral species representatives. "We're simply making it clear that the old rules no longer apply. Humanity will not be anyone's slave ever again." The economic implications were staggering. Human industries, built on captured Reaper technology and refined through years of desperate innovation, were producing goods that made Federation manufacturing look obsolete. Their ships were faster, their weapons more powerful, their technology more advanced. Commander Brett Young, now head of human intelligence operations throughout the galaxy, maintained networks that rivaled anything the Federation had ever built. Human agents operated on hundreds of worlds, gathering information and building relationships with beings who had grown tired of alien bureaucracy. Their recruiting, reported a worried Zephyrian spy master, not just humans but aliens who want to work for a government that actually gets things done. This was perhaps the most troubling development from the Federation's perspective. Humans were not just building their own civilization. They were attracting the best minds from other species. Scientists, engineers, soldiers, and administrators were defecting to human colonies in increasing numbers. The final blow to the old order came when the Void Reaper threat officially ended. With no external enemy to fight, the Federation's primary purpose disappeared. Member species began questioning why they needed central authority, when humanity had proven that independent action was more effective. Admiral Chris Walker, now commanding the human exploration fleets, led missions into uncharted space beyond the galaxy's edge. They were looking for new worlds, new resources, and new challenges. They were also making it clear that humanity's ambitions extended far beyond their current territory. The galaxy watched with mixture of awe and fear as human fleets disappeared into the cosmic darkness, returning months later with reports of new star systems and alien contacts. They were expanding faster than any species in galactic history, driven by the same energy that had won the war. President Helen Davis received delegations from across the galaxy, all asking the same questions. What did humanity want? Where would they stop? Could there be peace between humans and the older species? Her answers were always the same. Humanity wanted respect, freedom, and the right to determine their own destiny. They would stop when they felt secure. Peace was possible, but only between equals. The transformation was complete. In less than 5 years, humanity had gone from primitive vassals to the galaxy's dominant power. They controlled the most advanced technology, commanded the most effective military, and possessed the most dynamic economy. But perhaps most importantly, they had earned something that could not be taken away. The galaxy now feared humanity more than they had ever feared the Void Reapers. When humans spoke, aliens listened. When humans made demands, aliens complied. When humans said no, the conversation ended. As Dr. Wright noted in her final report to Earth, humanity had paid a terrible price for their freedom. They had become something darker and more ruthless than they had ever been before. They had learned to fight monsters by becoming monsters themselves, but they had also become something unprecedented in galactic history. They were a species that absolutely refused to be conquered, dominated, or controlled by anyone. They had proven that with enough determination and creativity, any challenge could be overcome. The galaxy trembled at the mention of human names, not because humans were evil, but because they had shown what true warfare looked like when survival was at stake. They had demonstrated that sometimes the only way to win was to become more dangerous than anything that threatened you. In the end, humanity had achieved their ultimate goal. They were free, they were feared, and they were respected throughout the galaxy. The species from the small blue planet had claimed their place among the stars through strength, intelligence,